why are you striking? Like, what's your beef? What are you complaining about?
Right.
What's your position? The government says, hey, we had this pandemic and we didn't have enough doctors that were available to really manage this pandemic, or we were fearful that we were going to have enough doctors to manage this pandemic. So we think we need more doctors. What's the doctor's argument? Are they saying, well, we don't need any more doctors? How much of it's real?
Yeah.
Versus just power.
So it's like a show of strength almost.
Show of strength.
Solidarity. 안녕하세요. 저는 미국에서 사는 그랜트 제임스고요. 오늘 제 아버지이신 테리 제임스라는 의사하고 우리가 같이 이런 영상을 찍고 있습니다. 우리 아버지께서는 유타주에 살지 않고 텍사스에서 살고 있기 때문에 이렇게 줌이라는 회의 앱으로 이렇게 만나고 있습니다. 얼마 전에 뉴스를 보다가 전국에 의사 총파업이 있다고 나와 있었기 때문에 제가 그것이 무엇인지 정확히 몰랐으니까 좀 더 자세히 좀 보려고 했습니다. 근데 제가 의사도 아니니까 직장적으로는 제가 광고 대행사를 소유하고 있는데요. 우리 아버지께서는 마취과 의사였습니다. 그리고 2년 전에 은퇴를 했기 때문에 지금 활발하게 그런 일을 안 하시고 다른 일을 하고 있습니다. So this is my dad. His name is Dr. Terry James. Maybe take a second and introduce yourself.
I'm a physician, and I've been a physician here in the United States now for many, many years. Started practicing medicine back in 1980 or so. Been a practicing anesthesiologist. I've done cardiac anesthesia, OB anesthesia. Before that, did emergency room, family practice, little West Texas town. Pretty diverse experience. Understand what things look like from a physician's perspective. And we live in these interesting times with this COVID, which has been a real challenge here.
Yeah, I think it's kind of interesting that right now we have a strike going on as well, right? We just had the whole NBA strike, which is different because it's not doctors servicing patients, but it is kind of similar. And I've seen some similarities because it seems like the players got really upset about the shooting that happened in Wisconsin, so they decided they weren't going to play. And then more recently, since they are playing again, some people are now boycotting the NBA because they didn't like how some players handled that. At least some people, ratings are down quite a bit, and at least that's kind of what they say in the news. And similarly, I've heard that some people in Korea who are patients are boycotting the doctors to some degree because they're upset as well, you know? So it's kind of interesting how these forces, I think, play back and forth, you know what I mean?
Right.
So let's do this. I've got a couple of different videos. Let's watch some of those videos. I'll have you watch them over there, and I'll kind of record your reaction, and you can pause it if you want to and kind of talk through different points that you kind of see, and then just kind of get your perspective as a physician. 여러분들이 아시다시피 저희들은 그냥 외국인인데 물론 한국에서 살지는 않기 때문에 이게 우리 그냥 개인적인 반응이라고 봐야 되지만 그래도 해외에서 자기 나라를 본다는 게 좀 중요하다고 생각을 하기 때문에 쓸데없는 일이 아니라고 생각을 합니다. 자, 봅시다. So, what are some of your kind of initial thoughts when you see that?
So my first thought is, why are you striking? Like, what's your beef? What are you complaining about?
Right.
What's your position? The government says, hey, we had this pandemic and we didn't have enough doctors that were available to really manage this pandemic, or we were fearful that we were going to have enough doctors to manage this pandemic. So we think we need more doctors.
Yes.
For the public good,
right.
Because they're there to defend the public interest. Now, that seems like a reasonable argument if there's data to really back that up. What's the doctor's argument? Are they saying, well, we don't need any more doctors?
From what I understand, the government wants to make a new medical school. And that medical school would have 4,000 new doctors that it would produce over the next 10 years out of it.
Right.
Yeah, so it's basically making a new medical school, allowing there to be more doctors in the workforce. On the flip side, what I understand that the doctors are saying, and we'll watch a video on this in just a second, but I think that their perspective is we haven't been incentivized enough to go work in these other areas for the coronavirus. So it's kind of about money. They say we have enough people. It's just not, the incentive isn't there to work, but they don't want a flood of new workers in the medical space. So it seems like it's kind of down, it's a capacity issue and a money issue. And it's blurry as far as doctors say it's not really needed. Government says it is needed. I don't know.
Right, right. So the real argument is one side says we don't have enough.
Right.
And the other side says, well, we have enough. And the doctors who say that we have enough don't want more doctors because they think they're going to get less income if they have more doctors. So
Right.
There is a private interest. It's going to affect my personal income. The government it's a public argument. Hey, we need to make sure that we've got sufficient number of doctors to take care of the public interest, which is their health.
Right. Have you ever heard of anything like this in the United States? Have doctors ever gone on strike for any reason historically?
Doctors in the 40 years that I've been practicing medicine, I've never seen doctors, go on strike.
Yeah.
But you would have to be organized at a national level in order to do that. There might be, local doctors that would protest here and there, but this is across the entire country. You got 130,000 doctors that are servicing, 52 million people across this country. What I find kind of interesting about this is that if you look at the data on this, there's a very low incidence of birth rate in Korea, very low.
Yeah. I mean, how many kids do you have?
We had 6,
and I have 5. And here's one funny thing. My friends that are Korean that live here in Utah, and granted Utah has more kids than other states, they're all 4 or 5 kids as Koreans, which I find shocking. But those same people, if they were to live in Korea, probably back down to just 1 or 2,
Yeah. Here's what I find kind of fascinating about the argument. From 2014 to 2019, over a 5-year period of time, the Korean population grew by 1 million people. That's all.
Yeah.
That's all. And if you look at it.
From what years to what years?
From like 2014 to 2019.
In 5 years, 1 million people.
Years. So 5 years, we went from 51 to 52 million people. And what happened is that currently there are 2.6 physicians for every 1,000 people in Korea. All right. So that means that if you grew that 1 million, then you would need around 2,300 or so physicians. Maybe it's closer to 2,600 physicians over that same time period, right? And to take care of them. Well, that means that there are governments saying, hey, look, we need 4,000 over 10 years, which is about 400. So you're over that 5-year period of time, divide that by 5, then that's about 400 to 500 physicians per year just to match the population growth.
Right.
So Korea is only adding 1 million people every 5 years.
Yeah.
Pretty slow growth.
Right.
Then it only needs 400 to 500 new docs per year just to keep up with the population growth. That doesn't even consider that there are people retiring or physicians that pass away or what have you. So it seems like a reasonable request on the part of the government to say just based on population historically, we need to add about 400 plus physicians a year for the 1 million increase in population. And that's about what the forecast is from 2020 to.
So to you, it doesn't seem like unreasonable, right?
Based on historical population growth and based on I mean, they were averaging in 2000, in the year 2000, there was 1.3 physicians per thousand patients or per thousand population. Now it's 2.6. So it doubled, but it took almost 20 years for this to double because the slow growth in the population. I mean, Korea really has a slow population growth. And I mean, it takes you 5 years to add 1 million people. That's 200,000 people a year.
Yeah.
So the birth rate.
What is that? What is that like compared to the United States? I don't know any data on that.
So, you know, we've got 340, 50 million people right now in this country.
Yeah.
But
we have a lot of immigration though, right? Immigration's a big driver for us.
You have immigration, but you have your birth rate's much higher.
Much higher.
Korea has a very low birth rate. And if you look at doctors per thousand, then it's one of the lowest ratios in the world.
Really? What is ours at?
Most countries around 4 on the high end. You've got like 4+.
Yeah.
On the low end, it's a little over 2.
Yeah.
We're probably sitting somewhere around 3+.
So I mean, I'm obviously not a doctor, and I don't really know that much about Korean politics. But if I lived proximity-wise as close to China as Korea is, and it seems like a lot of these virus issues keep coming out of China, it seems like if I'm the government, it would make sense to say, yeah, we need to be at least caught up with world standards on a reasonable ratio. Now, granted, I did see one thing that talked about how Korea is very fast, and the rate that single doctors are able to go through more patients is much higher because they're very technologically savvy and efficient as a country. So maybe they don't need as many doctors, and also their country is very small, so it's very population dense, whereas America, we're all over the place, so you would need more local, just like Walmart, you need more spots, you know what I mean? But it doesn't seem that unreasonable to me for the government to say, China's in our back door, we're less than the world average, at least with population growth. And it seems like the doctors are fearful about the fear of loss, you've seen this here in the United States. You told me as a child, don't go be a doctor because doctors make way less now, and they're continuing to make less than when you went into medical school, right?
Right. So here's some of the interesting facts about Korea. The average physician in Korea makes about $150,000 a year.
Is that not very
much?
Average,
a GP in America makes $150,000 a year. So, but that's a blend of specialty.
Okay.
But what's important here is that they make almost 4 times what the average other employment is in Korea. So you're making 4 times above the general population, number one. They make more money than judges, lawyers, CEOs. So they're the top professional in the country.
Doctors are in Korea.
What
is it here? I feel like CEOs and salespeople make more than doctors here. Am I wrong?
I think that you got to look at the different buckets here.
Yeah.
So on a professional basis, I think the doctors make more dollars.
Yeah.
Than the highest professionals do. So I think that's true in Europe, true here, and true there.
Yeah.
But I think that doctors don't necessarily. They can become very protective about turf.
Yeah.
And about being, how much of it is real and how much of it is perceived? Right. How much of it is that a government says, I'm going to do this, and what's your recourse?
Yeah.
Other than to say, well, wait a minute, I want you to tell me what to do.
Yeah. Well, and maybe it's a check on the government saying, is that really what you need? And with negotiating, a lot of times you put your ask out there, but what you really want is half of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't know that this is so much about how much of it's real versus just power. Hey, look, we don't want to be told what to do. We don't want you to edict us and say, we're going to have another 4,000 doctors here.
Right.
I want to challenge that. We didn't have a chance to talk about it. How'd you come up with that number?
Right.
We feel differently. So part of it could be the fact that we weren't part of the process, and this
Yeah.
is how we don't want the process to take place, as opposed to what's the real public need.
Right.
How much of it's posturing, because we're an organization, we got $130,000. We're not going to be treated this way.
Yeah.
To show you that you can't just tell us what to do.
So it's like a show of strength almost. Solidarity.
Yeah.
But it's not like the NBA where there's 300 players and they literally can't shut down. I don't know what the NBA makes. I know the NFL, they said, makes $25 billion a year or something. Maybe that was the NBA. I can't remember, but it's crazy that 300 people can shut that down. You know what I mean? But you got 133,000 people you're trying to get on the same page, and people die in the process, and a pandemic. It's really hard. You can't just all go do it. You know what I mean?
There has to be a balance between public interest and private interest.
Yeah.
And there's got to be, I can understand the physicians wanting to sort of protect, one, their income.
Yeah.
And their position. And they don't want to have doctors fighting for, you got 1% of the population is participating in this. They want to have the smartest and brightest and most.
Yeah, but I mean,
to do that.
$150,000, when I hear that, it doesn't sound like a lot of money to me. And maybe Korean economy is slightly different. I know when we went there for a trip last year, we stayed at the Marriott Hotel, and because of the exchange rates, I felt like we got a really good deal off of our dollars. It felt like it was a lot cheaper than I thought that what we got out of it. Right. But I mean, $150,000, it seems like a lot of years to go to school for $150,000. You know what I mean? Right.
And you don't know the background here, because it could be that most of the population in Korea lives in Seoul.
Right.
So they've had this tremendous shift from rural economy to an urban-based economy. They may not have the coverage that they want to have in these rural areas. You don't make as much money there. And so it could be a distribution problem.
It sounds like it, right?
Opposed to an absolute
density
number of physicians that are required to service the population.
Right.
So you don't know what all the issues are here. Is it really an economic issue? Is it a distribution issue? Is it a don't tell me what to do issue? And so we got to go through a process of negotiation here with respectful of both sides.
Right.
Is the COVID the real issue or not? Probably not. I doubt that the COVID.
Well, I mean, nothing's going to happen. I mean, COVID, or maybe there's 2 years left on the COVID thing, 2.5 years. Who knows?
They've had 400 people die from this.
Yeah.
It isn't like I mean, we had the issues that happened in Europe, the issues that happened here in relation to COVID was they didn't want to overwhelm the hospitals.
Right.
And so they didn't want people being so sick that they had to go to the ICU and on ventilators and not enough personnel. But if you don't have the threat of the hospital, and they've only had 400 people die.
I know.
I mean, it's like
crazy.
Nobody's going to the hospital.
No, I know.
It isn't like they've overwhelmed the hospital system. We had to go into a lockdown because we didn't want to overwhelm the hospital system. That didn't happen there.
Yeah.
And so what do you need all these doctors for if you didn't threaten
if it never happened, right?
Correct.
Right.
So,
if you're the doctors, you're like, if this is about COVID, we did our job.
Correct.
What are we doing?
So I think that I don't know that it's a valid argument to say we need doctors because of a potential future pandemic or viral threat, when in fact they did their job.
Right.
The current one.
Right.
When the hospital system wasn't overwhelmed.
Right.
They had adequate personnel to contend with this. Had only 20,000 people that have this illness out of 52 million.
Which is, I don't know how they.
That's not even close to what we have in the United States.
Yeah.
And they've only had 400 people who died.
One thing I will say that Korea does a really good job of is they have way more unity. And I don't know if it's just because they're so homogenous or if it's just the nature of Asian countries in general. Yeah. But our country struggles getting on the same page. We've got, we've got Democrats, we've got Republicans, we've got lots of racial and cultural backgrounds. And you just don't see that sense of unity where they say, hey, this is a big deal. We're all going to row this way. And everyone does it. It's just phenomenal what they've been able to do, and the technology of how swiftly they can make stuff happen there compared to America's kind of a mess. But at the same time, America cares more about money than health at the end of the day. I feel like, when it came down to it, our government said, we're going to have another problem, an equally, if not greater impact with money. And so like you guys have been quarantined, right? So it's basically the strategy is if you're old or whatever, we're going to segment you and everyone else needs to go back to work. That's kind of the message, I feel like.
Yeah. I think that there are tremendous cultural differences. So I look at South Korea and contact tracing. Well,
we don't even do that here.
No, because people value their privacy and they say, no, I don't want you tagging me around on my phone.
Yeah.
Don't call me up and tell me who I saw in the last 7 days, because subpoena me if you want the information. I'm not going to voluntarily give it to you.
And I'm not wearing a mask because.
No. And so we have all these human rights issues and freedom issues that, whereas in South Korea, in some ways they're much more sensible, because they go, well, this is not about me, it's about us.
Right.
And it's about protecting the public health and your neighbors, not your own personal rights.
Right. Well, awesome. I appreciate you, Dad, jumping on and talking to me about this.
Yeah, good conversation. Interesting topic. We'll see what happens.
Totally. 그리고 이 영상을 보신 여러분들께 감사한 말씀을 드리고 싶고요. 만약에 우리가 틀린 부분이 있거나 댓글로 나누고 싶은 말씀이 있으시면 물론 댓글로 달아주시면 감사하겠습니다. 제가 아직까지도 한국 문화랑 경제적인 것에 대해서 많이 배우고 있기 때문에 어휘력도 조금 부족하긴 하지만 앞으로 좀 더 열심히 공부하도록 해보겠습니다. 이 사건이 조금 특이하다고 생각해요. 아무튼 감사합니다. Thanks, Dad.
All right, very good. Thank you, Dan. Bye.